do it. Just do it. Just taking action on it. Because once you do it, your confidence is just going to shoot up like, wow, I did it. I don't know if it's going to be successful, but I am proud of myself. And you absolutely should be proud of yourself with that.
Hello and welcome back to the Career Flipper. I'm Jenny Dempsey, your host, your fellow career changer, and your furniture rescuing friend who's still figuring it out as I go. If you're new here, this podcast started after I got laid off from my job in tech and kind of spiraled. Like full on, what am I doing with my life mode? I applied to a billion jobs, got ghosted left and right, and in the middle of that, found myself dragging a busted coffee table home and didn't have a plan, but I had a little bit of paint and some sandpaper and watched a lot of YouTube to figure out how to start flipping furniture and transform these junky pieces into something new for a second chance. And well, I haven't stopped since. Now, I also host this show where I talk to people from all over the world who flip their careers, their lives, their mindsets, on purpose or by accident, and live to tell the tale. This week, I got to sit down with my friend Liz Dekofsky, who lives in Los Angeles and is just such a light. I mean, she works full-time in a customer-facing role, and on the side, she runs a super fun business curating thrifted style bundles. You know, like how walking into a thrift store can... Not for me, I love thrift stores, but I know it can feel overwhelming to some people. Like it's just too many racks, too many things to go through. But Liz takes that off your plate. She finds the gems for you, styling up secondhand pieces and putting them together into bundles that you can wear to your next event or just to work. But her story really goes so much deeper than just really cool outfits. Liz recently got sober, and that choice was a huge turning point. It gave her the clarity and confidence to stop hiding parts of herself and really go after the things that she cares about. She talks honestly about what it's like to balance a creative side hustle with a full-time job, how she keeps imposter syndrome from running the show, spoiler, it still shows up, she just doesn't let it drive, and why this version of her feels more aligned than ever. So if you're someone who's been sitting on an idea waiting for the right time or feeling like you need to be 100% healed or ready before you begin, Liz is here to show you that starting small, messy, and real is more than enough. Let's get into the episode now. So, Liz, we know each other from a really musical, cool connection. We've stood on these stages and looked out at crowds cheering on these amazingly talented musicians. One in particular you are incredibly close to, and we'll get to hear more of that later. But isn't the power of music and what it brings into people's lives just like wild to watch and witness?
It is. It is. It just brings me and so many other people joy. And I've met so many great people, you, for example, through it. So yes, yeah. Definitely agree with you on that one.
And if anyone is wondering what band we're talking about, Tribal Seeds is the band. Liz, your husband is in the band. And I just think that the power of music is incredible, and watching those guys play. And while we could probably yap about them all day, this episode is about you. Tell everybody who you are and where you are and what you're doing now.
Yeah, absolutely. So I am Liz. As Jenny mentioned, we're connected through this music thing, Tribal Seeds. My husband is Zeb. He is the drummer of Tribal Seeds. And yeah, I'm out here. We're out here in Los Angeles. We live over by the beach in Redondo Beach. And right now, I have kind of two things going on. I have a full-time, kind of like 9 to 5 situation. I work remote for a software sales company. And then I recently started to do something for myself. I started a a thrifting business. So not only do I thrift for myself and my loved ones, I am now starting to help others, find curated pieces and putting together bundles for them.
Which is so exciting because doing that on top of a full time job is a lot. And we'll get into all this. And I think for everyone listening, while this may not necessarily seem like a traditional career flip, I think what really drew me to your story, Liz, is the fact that career flips typically start just like this. We have an idea. We want to do something, like you said, for ourselves or something different, or whatever it is. And sometimes we don't ever start it, but you started it in addition to having a job. And I think a full-time job. And I think there's a lot that we can learn from what you're navigating to apply to our own lives and be like, oh yeah, I can do this too. So Liz, like, how did this all start? I mean, your career, you've been doing what you're doing for a really long time. And so could you talk a little bit about how you got started on the career path you're at now? And then what was the kicker that prompted you to start your thrifting business on the side?
Yeah, absolutely. So when I graduated college, I got into real estate. So got into real estate sales. And honestly, from there, like you said, I've been doing this for so long. I just stayed on the path of sales and customer support just because I feel like I'm really good with people. Obviously, those two jobs or careers do require you being good with people to be successful. So yeah, ever since I was a little girl, my dad said, I would stop people and say hi to everybody. So just was a very outgoing child. And I still have, that side of me too. As I feel like the older we get, the more introverted we become. But I still have that in me. And, taking what I knew, what I learned from, working in sales for so long, working with people, finding something that, people either want or need. It just took me a long time to kind of figure out something for myself. I knew I always wanted to do, my own thing and, not work under somebody like for the rest of my life. So, I got really, really into thrifting. I've thrifted. I've, gone to thrift stores here and there, since I was in middle school, high school. But it was maybe about 2 years ago, I got really kind of heavy into it. Like I said, I live in Redondo Beach, in LA. There's so many, people out here, and the stores out here just have such great items. And, I love shopping. I love shopping. I love following trends. I've always been like that. And, I was just like, you know what? You can find all of this stuff at the thrift. And I used to do the Sheen hauls, the, Amazon hauls, things like that. But I just started like, I like to clean out my closet, and I was constantly giving that stuff away because it was just, it was trendy, but
Yeah.
it was also like shitty, shitty.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then I learned about, what goes into making those clothes, the labor and, the mistreatment of workers, So I was just like, you know what? There's, clothes that need to be recycled, and we can do that. And there's an overabundance of clothes and, shoes and bags and things like that at the thrift. So I started out, long story long, I started out looking for myself, and then I got really, really good at it for myself and, for Zeb, my husband, that I was like, why don't I do this? Like, I would do it for, our mutual friend, Melissa,
Mhm,
and
mhm.
some of my other friends. And they're like, girl, you're so good at this. You have a great eye. And I'm like, wow, I can actually do this for other people. I found some, mentors and inspo on social media like Instagram, TikTok, and, reseller wise, seeing how they did it. Um, and just took that leap and was like, let me just try this out. Let me just do this.
Yeah. I love that. I love that. So just to kind of like sum everything up and what I'm hearing, it's like you had the day job, that you had the 9 to 5, but you knew that there was just something else you'd want to do, but you weren't really sure. Like there were kind of like questions, but then you leaned into something that you were personally interested in, shopping. And not only shopping, you tied it back to this sustainability aspect of like, oh, there are pieces of clothing that, the way that they're made and then the way that they are discarded, it's like a process that may not be the most like, I don't know, supportive. And the way that you clean out your closet and to get rid of these old things and give them away. And you just kind of started to piece things together, and how that kind of fell into place ended up with like, wow, I'm getting good feedback about the things that I'm finding and like sharing with friends, or like, you probably get like tons of compliments on your outfits because you always look fantastic every time I've seen you. And so I just think like there becomes this time where you had that like light bulb moment where you're like, okay, well, I'm just going to give this a try and see if maybe I could do it on a scale that is not just for friends and family. Maybe there's more. And I love that because so many people think about, okay, I don't want to do the 9 to 5 forever, but what can I do? And a lot of the times everyone's thinking so big, or they're looking around for something, but it's kind of right in front of our faces. Like it was something you enjoyed. And I know personally, I love thrifting, love it. I've been thrifting since I was a little kid. It just was part of like the culture I grew up in at home. Like, so thrifting clothes has always been so fun, but there is a time component to it. These stores are big. And
Yeah.
I hear from a lot of my friends, they're always like, I would love to thrift more, but I don't have the time to sort through everything. So here you come along and you do that. But now I'm curious, how do you find the time juggling a full-time job and also being able to curate and find these very unique pieces? So can you talk a little about the time management aspect of it and how you juggle
Yeah,
it?
absolutely. So I'm blessed to be able to work from home. So I have got my 9 to 5 dialed in. I can, you know, get, 8 hours of work done, honestly, in 4 hours. So
Yes.
that piece of it. Also, since I had kind of perfected it for myself, I know I have a route. I know which stores I'm going to hit up
Yeah.
on which days. So I typically go in the beginning of the week and then a little bit towards the end of the week. And there's about four in my, immediate like 1-2 mile radius here that I just go boom, 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 and
Yeah.
I know I try to have always a plan. So that also helps with the time management at each store. So you're not spending, hours because you can definitely spend hours in the store. And,
Yeah.
there are the days where, I'm like, okay, I have the time. Let me look through every single item here. And then
Mhm.
there's other, days where I know the specifics of what I'm looking for other people or, for myself. So there's that. And, I try to get, of course, they always say this, try to get the hard stuff done, first thing in the morning. So the hard stuff being my 9 to 5, getting that out of the way.
Yeah.
Getting that out of the way. Also, of course, responding because I'm a, online reseller, responding to offers.
Mhm.
I can do everything kind of simultaneously because my full-time job, I'm on the phone. So, and a lot of, a lot of people do not answer my phone calls. It's, it's a numbers game with that. So I can multitask. So I can, bring up my screen. I have two monitors here at my desk. I can make the call. I can look on the other screen at my, Depop, my Poshmark, my eBay, and respond to offers and respond to messages from, buyers on there. So, yeah, that's pretty much how I, have, managed my time.
Mhm.
But, I'm still learning. I'm still in the learning, phase here. Um, there are times, with complete honesty, I do feel a little bit of burnout. My voice is a little raspy now because I did get sick, and I think, just
Yeah.
pushing myself really hard, doing the most. Kind
Yeah.
of my body's like, girl, you need to like slow down a little bit. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. And that's a good reminder too, that while time management can play into all this and is so important for juggling all the things, we still got to take care of ourselves, especially if we're sick. And sometimes that means we have to slow down. And I
Yeah.
think for people like you and me who are similar, where we got our multi monitors and we're like doing all the things, but also on our phone, like it can be hard to give ourselves that permission to be like, okay, I'm maybe not going to answer this message in 24 hours. It might be 48 or 1 hour instead of 30 minutes. It could be, it just kind of, we have to really reset expectations. And I think that's a really good call out. And also just kind of hearing how, where you're dialed in with the 9 to 5 and you're able to structure your day where you still get the things that you need to get done. You're still on that team. You're still doing what you need to do. And then you're able to, your route. You have that like strategically mapped out. And how do you kind of keep track of like, when it comes to like customers, because we want to talk about that part, because some people who are starting their own business might only be used to working with customers in like a corporate setting. But when you do it for your own brand, sometimes it can, I don't know, sometimes it can be a little bit more challenging because it almost feels like, at least sometimes for me with furniture, it's like, they're not critiquing a business that I'm working for that I'm like, okay, whatever. They're critiquing a piece of art that I made or something that I made for, whatever. I spent time and energy. And it can be a little bit, I don't know. It's almost like even if you've been doing it for years and years and years, there's a bit of a mentality shift. At least that's what I experienced of when working with customers, when it's your own personal brand. And I'm wondering if that is anything that has kind of like came on your path too, where I don't know, it just sometimes might be a little bit different. Maybe not hard or challenging, but it can be a little different.
Yeah. You're right, because there's that aspect of, it is your own business. And right now, because I'm in the building phase, I'm having, like kind of my sphere of influence be the supporting, the drive to building this. So that would be friends, family, and I don't want to let them down. So it's it's that's what like kind of going back to like giving your body that time, that can be a little added stress, right? Because you want to make sure you're making them happy. Not saying they're any better than like the, customers that you don't really know.
Yeah.
um, but it's that added component, right? That you have these high expectations for yourself because these are people you love and you care about.
Yeah.
um, I think kind of going back to, the sales experience that I have, I am so just numb and immune to rejection. And so I think I have like a little bit more of a thick skin when it comes to that. Of course, like I said, I want to make everybody happy, but I just know sometimes it's not possible. Sometimes it's just, you and you probably included, we've all been there where we've bought in something and we were so excited about it, but then it just kind of fell a little short. We're like, this isn't, this didn't turn out the way I thought it was going to turn out. And I have to keep reminding myself of that. Like, it is okay if I miss the mark on something. But I got to keep reminding myself of that because like I've been
Yeah.
lucky I haven't experienced that just yet.
Yeah.
And it's because I'm still in that building phase and I'm working with, people that are close to me.
Mhm.
Um,
Yeah.
I don't know. Maybe I did miss the mark, but they love me and they don't want to like bring me down right now. Who knows?
Yeah.
But yeah, I'm always, I've always been kind of like open to feedback from people. I think that's such an important part of, you know, growing a business and having a good business and having good operations is, taking that feedback and, taking action on that feedback.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. I completely agree. I think that the being receptive to feedback is such an important component of this. And I think sometimes knowing how to get trustworthy feedback from the right sources sometimes can be sometimes a juggle. Like certain people who may not really understand or get what you're doing may not be the right people to get feedback from, but then also they could be because they have such an outside perspective. So it's interesting how we get feedback. But I think something you brought up was so important was like this like thick skin. And I feel like for those of us who've worked in like with customers, we develop this and it takes a while. But what's important and what stands out to me about that is something I hear from other people who have changed their careers is these things that these kind of these golden threads that, we may start out in a completely different industry or job, and then we move to something else down the road, and we may not know how we're going to get there. But there are things and skills that we learned in the past that we can carry with us and repurpose. And it sounds like at this point, some of those like the sales skills or the ability to work so well with customers and really understand their needs and to get back to them and kind of the almost like multitasking abilities that we're so accustomed to when we work with customers on like different channels, for example, or I don't know. I just think there's a lot of these kind of golden threads that you have in your current 9 to 5 that you can repurpose and use as you build your business. And I'm curious if there are any additional ones that kind of stand out about things that you've learned from the past. I mean, even going back to real estate, if there are things that like, you're using now, because we sometimes feel we may like, sometimes these other careers that we flip to, people are like, gosh, I know nothing about this. But it's like, wait a second, X, Y, and Z from this job.
Yeah.
You can apply it to this. Are there any other things that kind of stand out for you?
Yeah, absolutely. I think a huge one is going to be communication. I also worked in mortgage too, and I don't know if you've bought in your own home, but it's buying a home is such a, your first home especially is such a stressful life event. And just having that communication from your real estate agent, from your mortgage loan officer, um, really eases the process for these customers, these buyers, these clients, whatever. So I have always prided myself on being communicative with everybody because I like that. I mean, just a silly example is like having my dog sitter when I'm out of town communicate with me, send me pictures of my dog, let me know what's going on. And the over communication, I prefer that over none, and
Yeah.
so I try to find that healthy balance of not bothering somebody, but, communicating with them, confirming, their wants and needs, and just letting them know, like, keep that open conversation with me too. It helps tremendously because you're establishing more trust in that relationship, between, yourself and the client or the customer. So, yeah,
Yeah.
that's one big one.
Oh yeah, that's so huge. That's so huge, especially like Prue, you're on a bunch of different channels too. You mentioned all of the store fronts that you have, but in addition to that, you're all over social media. And so being able to communicate on those channels, plus email, plus all the things. And I think that's huge. And that is a skill that cannot necessarily be trained just like overnight. Like you have worked your way. So I'd love that you brought that up. And
Wow.
kind of on a totally different topic, Liz, just, sometimes starting something on the side or leaning into this, like kind of these things that really light us up, there can be a bit of imposter syndrome sometimes of like, ooh, should I do this? Maybe I shouldn't do this because of, timing wise, this is going to take too much time. I don't know anything, blah, blah, blah. Was there ever any like, because you're in it right now. So
Yeah.
was there anything when you like decided to do this or, that you deal with on a regular basis that is kind of difficult or maybe made you question it? Or does that ever come up for you?
Oh my gosh, you thank you for bringing asking that because I went through this. So I think it was maybe the end of last summer. was following the girlies on TikTok, saw like the trend come back up of the little biker boot trend. And I was like, wow, I actually have a pair of really nice Jimmy Choo biker boots that I've just held on to for
Hmm.
all these years. Like, I can resell these and I can sell these for like, they're just sitting in my closet. I can resell these and make some money. Then I kind of like was like, oh, that's kind of a cool idea is reselling. Like, let me do some research on social media about it. And then I found, of course, there's always somebody, everybody always has an opinion, right? So I saw
Yeah.
a few like negative opinions about resellers, like, oh, resellers are just as bad as these corporations, they are, taking away from people who don't have money going to thrift stores and just buying it for low and selling it for high and I so it kind of stopped me from moving forward with the idea. I was so excited. I even spoke with Zeb about it. I was like, I could do this. He's like, yeah, you could totally do this. And then I just kind of like let it go. I was like, no, because I just like, I was like, well, maybe they're right. Maybe it is not, a noble thing to do. But then, and then also, this is kind of like on another topic, but related. I was, struggling with addiction to alcohol, drugs, all of that. So I also wasn't as motivated to, right? It didn't really, I was like, oh, it's an idea, but I had no motivation to do it. So then, fast forward a few months later, I got sober, in the beginning of this year, I was like, let me revisit this idea. I don't know. I was on some random walk with my dog and I saw, like a yard sale sign or something. And the idea came back in my head like, oh, people do this. And there's
Yeah.
nothing wrong with it. People are always going to have opinions about it. And, I think going back to your question, the imposter syndrome. Yes, of course. When I first started this, I was like, what am I doing? Like, there's so many like super pro resellers out there. Like I said, I follow these people because I want to like emulate what they're doing. If they're successful, I want to do what they're doing. And
Yeah.
once I started to go, I was like, oh my gosh, like, what am I doing? Well, I'm in it. So gonna keep going. So I'm not saying that totally went away because it does come up sometimes. I mean, even before I got on this, podcast with you, I was like, wow, I'm going on here as like talking about my resale business. Like, I just started it. Am I really going to talk about this on a podcast? But, hey, I'm having a great time.
Well, I'm glad you are because I am. And I think that it is just capturing these really early moments are such a huge part of growth. And I also I want to say thank you for sharing so openly about your addiction and how you like this is part of your story. And that is I don't know. I think it's such an important component because a lot of the times we don't see how that connects to work. And I think career flips are really just life flips in general. Like this is our life. How are we going to live it? We have so many things going on, the challenging things, the way that we reinvent ourselves, the way we face these challenges. And so hearing you bring that in and also that you are able to just still make the decision even though what you read and also the comparison mode that's so easy to fall into on social media. Like, gosh, been there, done that. There's so many furniture flippers that do this and they have, hundreds of thousands of followers. And I'm like, hi, Jenny, San Diego. Like, I'm pulling furniture off the curb. And yeah. And it's hard not to. But I think what's so impactful about what you're sharing is that you knew these things and you have these feelings and these thoughts and you still did it. And you have the struggle and you have the challenges and you still did it. And so now you're in it and you're absolutely right in the middle of it, making things happen and learning and open to learning and open to feedback. And I really want to highlight just how, I don't know, inspiring that is because it's not easy to just take that leap. And I don't know, I'm just really, really proud that you decided to do that, because it's making, it doesn't need to change the world, but you are changing small things in big ways. And the ripple effect is huge. Like that's where it lands, right? And so just not to change, the topic too much, but can you talk a little bit about what exactly you do? Like if I came to you as a client and I was looking for, I don't know, an outfit, like what do you then go look for it? Do you give suggestions? Can you talk a little bit about the actual curation part and what that looks like for you?
Absolutely. So the process goes like this. You reach out with interest. I do individually curated pieces as well as thrift bundles. For the individually curated pieces, it's a little bit more casual. You could just like message me, "Hey, I'm looking for a Penny Lane jacket. Hey, I'm looking for a bag that looks like this." And then I just, I'm like, cool, like I'll keep my eye out for it. I have several friends that are, looking for individual items. And I'm like, okay, they're like, just, keep an eye out when you go to the store. And for example, one of my friends was looking for like a fun, kind of Penny Lane jacket. Um, while it took me like a little bit of time to find it because it is a curated item, um, and I don't want to just pick something out just to get it done in a quick time. I want to pick something out where I know like, wow, this is beautiful and this is like perfect for what this person is looking for. So I ended up finding it. She had asked me back in February when I started all this, and I ended up finding it a few weeks ago. Very similar style and just authentic rabbit fur, just a beautiful jacket, and she loved it. So there's that side, so the individual curated items, and then the thrift bundle. So this one is a little bit more formal of a process. So I do have a Google form that's linked in my bio on my business page. And there's just some questions on there that need to be filled out. So, what your overall style vibe is, what it is like, are you looking for specific pieces, the sizing, of course, if you have favorite colors, are there patterns you want to avoid, all of that, just every little thing. I've tried to think of everything that I need.
Yeah.
And then, of course, if there's inspo pics, those as well. And then once I receive that, there's different size bundles. So there's a small, medium, large right now, and there's different prices for each bundle. I do require half deposit up front before I start the shopping. And, that's of course to make sure, I'm not wasting my time or my money doing this, because like you had mentioned earlier, it is quite time consuming, searching through everything, looking for those specific items. So just want to make sure, the buyer is serious. And yeah, once I do send pictures, I do allow people to kind of swap out, X amount of items if they're not really feeling what I found. And it also helps me too. It helps me like, okay, that's not what they're looking for. This is more so what they're looking for. And of course, I can always resell that item too.
Yeah.
So yeah, I want people to be happy. So, there's always, I do text communication with my clients, because it's just easier and faster for me to text them like a picture, like, hey, I found this. What do you think of this? And they're like, oh my God, I love that. And so yeah, that's kind of it for now. Once I finish the bundle, I let them know what the shipping cost is, and before it is shipped out, require obviously the rest of the payment
Mhm.
plus shipping, and then it's on its way.
That's exciting. You've really worked hard at chipping away at a very like personalized process. And I really appreciate you talking about that, because I think, again, just going back to helping other people who are thinking about making a change or starting something on the side, getting so specific about the actual process is so important. And you've ironed that out. And who knows how that will evolve and grow and shift over time based off of what you learn or what you're like, I don't like doing this. I like that, or, whatever it is. And that is perfectly okay and acceptable. And I think that that's incredible, having those offerings and being able to save clothes from going into the landfill, or just, I don't know, sitting in someone's closet, or sitting at a store in a thrift store in LA. Like, there's so many good things about what you're doing. And Liz, we've talked about a lot of stuff today. We've covered a lot of ground. I've asked you a bunch of random questions, but I got one more for you, because I think that people listening in can learn a lot from you being in the messy middle. It's not easy. There's a lot of emotions, but you're doing it anyways, and you're figuring it out, and how that's a great thing. And it doesn't mean it's easy or going to happen overnight. So I'm wondering if, you're thinking that, or we're kind of picturing that a person listening right now is someone who might be sitting at their desk, their day job, and they're feeling they want to make a change. They want to do something different that they really enjoy, that lights them up. They want to start this on the side, but they're scared, or maybe they think they can't do it, or they're just not sure because it might be hard, or they may not know what they're doing. What is a piece of advice that you would give to them right now?
That's a really great question, Jenny. I would just say, just do it. Just do it. Taking the action is just taking that first step, like, just taking action on it. Because once you do it and you've like taken the action step to do it, it's gonna make you feel so good. It's gonna like your confidence is just gonna shoot up like, wow, I did it. I don't know if it's gonna be successful, but I am proud of myself. And you absolutely should be proud of yourself with that. Lean on your friends and family. Lean on your friends and family. And I'm talking real friends. I'm not talking about those friends that are like low key haters. I'm talking
Yeah.
about those friends you consider brothers, sisters, family, because they are going to be like, wow, this is so up your alley. This is perfect for you, and they're going to give you that support and, those words of encouragement and, just keep affirming yourself. I've got my goals. I know we're on a podcast, people can't see this, but I've got my goals written out here.
Love that. Send me a picture of that.
Yeah, it's on my desk. And I look at it every day, and it that really helps me too. So
Yeah.
I just, like that one piece of advice is going to be just do it. Just do it. What do you have to lose? What do you have to lose? Fuck what everybody else thinks, fuck it if you fail. I mean, I've done so many things in my life. I've tried so many things in my life, and I've failed, and I'm just like, I look back on it, and I'm not like beating myself up over. I'm like, wow, I'm glad I tried it. At least now I know that that's not for me.
Yeah. Right. I love that. I love that. Thank you, Liz. Thank you for sharing everything today and just letting me pick your brain and being so honest and true about this journey that you're on and right in the middle of. And I think a lot of people will resonate with that advice. And who knows what your episode will inspire someone to do. So, Liz, how can people connect with you? Where can they find you? How can they get some curated thrift clothes from you?
Absolutely. First of all, before I drop that, Jenny, thank you so much for inviting me to do this. I've had a wonderful time, and I do hope that this episode inspires people. But yeah, you can find me on Instagram at curated by Liz D. Curated by Liz D. The Liz Dekofsky is the username for my Depop closet and my Poshmark closet. So that is where you can find me there. And then on Curated by Liz D, in the bio, there is the Google form there. And then, of course, DM works as well.
Awesome. So many easy ways to connect with you. Liz, thank you for your kind words, what you said earlier, and thank you for being here. And I just appreciate you so much. And Hope to see you in real life soon.
Me too. We will, Jenny. Thank you so much for having me.
Thanks so much for hanging out with me and Liz on this episode of the Career Flipper podcast. You can find all the links to connect with Liz in the show notes. And if this episode made you feel a little more seen or inspired, I would love it if you subscribed, left a review, and shared it with a friend. This whole flipping your career thing, it's way easier when you know you're not the only one Googling how to start over at 41 at 2 a.m. If you got a career flip story of your own or one still unfolding, I'd seriously love to hear it. Head to thecareerflipper.com and share it with me. Who knows, maybe you'll be a guest on a future episode. And hey, if you're looking for a speaker for your team, event, or community who just can talk about career change in a real, honest, and hopeful way, I do that. Send me a message over to hello@thecareerflipper.com. More than anything, though, I hope these stories remind you that it's okay to start over, to change your mind, to want something more. The first step can feel terrifying, but it can also be the thing that changes everything for the better. So, take the damn step, even if it's messy, even if you're scared. What's the best that could happen?